Masechet Yoma Daf Yod Aleph 11. We are talking all about Mezuzot today. This is like really the concentration of most of the places, most of the halachot of Mezuzot are here on this page. Three major topics. One is an entrance gate. Does that require a mezuzah? Entrance may be a gate for a gated property or a gated neighborhood. Or even if you're in your house, if you have a kind of portico in front of the front door that's outdoors, but it introduces. So that's very practical. Second, how about a storage place, a garage, a storage unit? In the olden days, a barn. We'll see a machloket about that. And the last topic will be, what about a personal residence versus a synagogue? So also all practical halachot. So we begin following up on what we said yesterday. There was a machloket between Rabbanan and Rav Yehuda, whether the Lishkat Parhedrin, that's how we got into this whole topic, where the Kohen stays, he sleeps there for 7 days, and does that require mezuzah or not? And Rabbanan said yes, even though he has to stay there. And Rav Yehuda says no. This is according to the last interpretation of Rava. Nevertheless, even though he must stay there, according to the Yehuda, he is still required to put a mezuzah because we don't want people to say, "Oh, look, he's stuck there," right? So that's why he has no mezuzah, because he's in jail. So we don't have to feel like he's in jail. We want to make him feel like he's at home, and therefore we put a mezuzah midrabanan. All right, so now based on that, we ask the question: Man tana leha de tanura banan kol ha'sharim shayu sham lo haya lahem mezuzah chutz misha'ar nikanor shelifnim mimenu lishkat parhedrin. So there were many different gates in the Bet HaMikdash. One here, entrance to the Lishkat HaNashim, all around the sides. There were other gates, many gates. But of all of them, only one of them had a mezuzah, and that's Sha'ar Nikanor. When you go up the 15 steps here and going into the main Chatzer, that is called Sha'ar Nikanor. It was donated by a person named Nikanor. That's what we call it that. And that one does require, we have also some nice pictures here. This is what it might have looked like if you were standing at the bottom of the stairs. I mean, even though mezuzah has to be on really the top third, but this was actually a very tall door. So it's a good question of where to place it. Okay, anyway, why that particular one? Because that was an entranceway to get into the Lishkat Parhedrin, which would be right in here to the right. And so therefore, since it's an entranceway to a residence, it is required. So who was the author of this baraita? Lema Rabbanan hi velo Rav Yehuda. Di Rav Yehuda hi gufa gezerah. Ana nekom v'nigzor gezerah ligzerah. So it makes perfect sense for Rabbanan. Rabbanan say you require mezuzah, right? Even though it's he has to be there, it's required. So if it's required for the Lishkat Parhedrin, it's also going to be required for the gate that's leading up to it. But according to the Yehuda, we only need it as a gezerah, so people won't say, according to Rava, that he's forcibly there. It's only to the Rabbanan. So now we're going to make a gezerah, like, maybe people will say that the Sha'ar Nikanor that's leading up to it doesn't have mezuzah because of that, right? And so that's too many steps. We don't make a gezerah on another gezerah. So that's the question, right? Is that true? And we say no. Afilu tema Rav Yehuda kula hada gezerah. You could even say it is Rav Yehuda. It's all considered one gezerah, meaning it's all together. Once we require a mezuzah on that chamber, so we're going to treat it like all the laws that you require. If you require a mezuzah there, then also required on the gate leading up to it. So this whole this is all according to Rava, who applies the reason for gezerah. All right, now we're still talking about gates. Let's see a full baraita all about different gates. Tenor Banan bisharecha, right? Uchtaftam amazot betecha ubisharecha. Shema says not only in your homes but also in your gates. So what is that? Echad sharei batim, gates of your personal house. Vehad sharei haserot, or gates of your courtyards. Vehad sharei medinot, gates of a city. Chad sharei ayarot, or of a town. Yesh behen chovat mitzvah lamakom. You are required to place a mezuzah there. This mitzvah that's for hamakom, for God. It's, I guess, appropriate to use that word here, or maybe lamakom just means in that place, for in that area. Okay, either way. Mishum shene'emar uchtaftam al mezuzot betecha ubisharecha. Okay, so now we see that all kinds of gates are required. Amar le'Abaye l'Rav Safra, hane abule timchoza, my tama la abadu lehu Rabbanan mezuzah. Now that you told me that even the gates of a city, let's say it's a walled city, enclosed neighborhood require a mezuzah. So Mehoza, we mentioned yesterday, actually, it was the suburb of Ctesiphon, which was a very big city. That was actually the summer capital of the Sasanian Empire. And this suburb, Mehoza, had a Jewish majority. And therefore, the question is, why isn't there a gate on the mezuzah on the gate of Mehoza? Okay, it's a good question. So Amar le hanhu chizuk le'akra dechubi hu de'abidi. He says, no, the truth is that the gate there of that city is not made for itself, but rather it's a reinforcement to the fort of turrets that's above the gate. And we can go back to our pictures here. So you can imagine it looking like this, right? So this is a fort where a guard would stay, and it's just more stable for it to be on on top of an archway. That's the only reason, not because we actually need the archway. Maybe there's lots of other openings all around. So therefore, since it's not really designated as an opening, but rather as a fortification, a foundation for the fortress on top, therefore it does not need a mezuzah. All right, so that's a good question, but it leads to another question. Well, then how about the fortress? That itself should require mezuzah. Because there's a guard there, the guard that of the prison guard there stays there, and therefore it should require mezuzah itself. Even though it's a public building, like a synagogue is a public building, but if the chazan sleeps in the Bet Knesset, then it's required. So even a public building, like a fortress, if the guard sleeps there, it would require a mezuzah. So that's the question. Answer: there's a danger. We're going to explain the danger. Is that if you put it in a public place where there's a lot of anti-Semitic feeling around, people are going to come and look at it and say, "Oh, what is this mezuzah doing at the gate of our city? It's a shared city. Non-Jews also go in there." And then they're going to see the mezuzah and suspect the Jews of witchcraft. Is this realistic? Probably it was back then, because mezuzah kind of has the same shape as an amulet, right? I'm sure they did have amulets, and they wrote something on a parchment and rolled it up. And so they might consider that this is some kind of a spell against the non-Jews. It's not true, but people might think that, and then they might retaliate against the Jews. Therefore, in order not to put ourselves in danger, they did not require a mezuzah in that particular spot. All right, how do we know in general that one can be lenient in cases of danger regarding mezuzah? From the following source, Tanya, mezuzat yachid nibdeket pa'amayim b'shavua shel rabim pa'amayim bayovel. This part is not directly relevant, but it's also important that a mezuzah of a single of an individual should be checked twice every Shavua. Means a 7-year cycle, right? Twice every Shemitah, every approximately 3.5 years. Shel rabim pa'amayim bayovel. If it belongs to the public, if it's in a public place, it only needs to be checked twice every 50 years, meaning every 25 years. Why the discrepancy? Well, maybe because if it's in a public place, people will be more careful about it and end up checking it often, or maybe the opposite, because because it's in a public place, so we can't burden people to the public to check it so often. Okay, there's opposite explanations for it. Okay, anyway, whatever the reason. So, but regarding the halakha of mezuzah every 3.5 years, there is an opinion that says that if your mezuzah is in a safe place, why should you check the mezuzah? One, it might get stolen. You want to just make sure it's there. Two, you want to check the writing, make sure it didn't crack off. Or smudge or anything. But the truth is, if it's in a guarded place and it's wrapped and it's in a temperature control, it's very unlikely that the mezuzah will have anything wrong with it. So there are some opinions that say if it is in a safe guarded place, then you do not have to check it that often. Okay. Anyway, אמר רבי יהודה, מעשה בארטבין אחד שהיה בודק מזוזות בשוק העליון של סיפורי. Artabin is an examiner, and he was checking mezuzot in the marketplace of Sipori, and that's in the Galilee in Israel. Masao kasdor echad v'natam menu 1,000 zuz. And a Roman kasdor comes from like the word inquisitor, right? You can see that there. He's a police official, a magistrate, and he took from him 1,000 zuz. In other words, you saw him checking the mezuzot, and he used that opportunity to take this money from him. Now, question on the story. Wait, what do you mean? How could it be that now because he's performing a mitzvah that he should get this fine imposed on him? I thought we have a general rule that someone who's doing a mitzvah should not get harmed. So how could it be that he got harmed if he's doing a mitzvah of checking mezuzot? The answer is Hecha dekvia hezeka shane dichtiv. Vayomer Shmuel ech elech v'shama Shaul v'haragani vayomer Adonai aglat bakar tikach biyadecha v'matad izboch l'Adonai bati. It's a very important principle because people quote this a lot. Oh, shilochem mitzvah hanani zokin. So then you can put yourself in danger? No, you cannot. This rule does not apply when danger is likely to happen. And so you have to know that these Roman officials are around looking for trouble. So how do we know that you cannot rely on a miracle even though you're doing a mitzvah? We learned it from Shemuel. Hashem commanded Shemuel to go and anoint David to be the next king. And Shemuel is worried. He says, how can I do that? If I go down, Shaul, who's the current king, will hear that I'm anointing a different king, and that would be mored b'malchut. That would be rebelling against the king, and he'll kill me. This would be treasonous. And so Hashem says, I have an idea for you. How about just take a calf with you and say, I'm taking my calf to sacrifice to God. Make up some excuse. And then that way you don't have to tell anyone that you're going to anoint David. So this is a fantastic story because it's Hashem telling him to do this subterfuge, right? Hashem could say, don't worry, I'll protect you, right? Or something like that. But no, the answer is, even though he's doing something at the command of God, nevertheless, if it's a dangerous situation, he should not rely, even Shemuel does not, commanded directly by God, does not rely on a miracle. Therefore, this rule is not applicable in places of danger. Okay, the point of this whole story was that when Romans see a mezuzah, the original story happened in Mezuzah, which is in Bavel, but Persians too. Persians, Romans, non-Jews, when they see a mezuzah, they get suspicious and they think that it's some kind of incantation and it comes to harm, and therefore that was that particular case. But otherwise, you would actually have to put a mezuzah in a public place. That is either a public, like a guard tower where someone stays, or in a gateway to the city. Okay, next topic. Taneh Rav Kahana kameh de Rav Yehuda. Bet hateven ubet habakar ubet ha'esim ubet ha'osarot. So all kinds of storage units, stores for hay, cattle barn, woodshed, or general storehouse. Peturim min hamezuzah. Because women make them beautify themselves there. They go there for privacy so that they could put on makeup or something. So now what does this mean? Umay neotot. Neotot is a vague word. It means rochasot. They wash there. Apparently in the house it's hard to get any privacy. So they go out to the storage house, to the barn. Nobody will bother them there. And they take some water with them and they wash up over there. Okay, now since they're washing, as you know, a bathroom is not used for respectable uses, and so therefore a wash house, since they're using it for washing, that's why it's patur from a mezuzah. Okay, so that's Rav Kahana's opinion, and he said that this to Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda counters. So you're telling me that the only reason why you don't put a mezuzah in these storage areas is because women tend to use them for bathing. But if, let's say, they're just standard barn that is not used for bathing, then you would say that they are required to put a mezuzah. So that is, in fact, Rav Kahana's opinion. So, okay, so remember this, Rav Kahana says, storage units, plain storage units, do require a mezuzah. So the Rav Yehuda challenges this. We have another braita. What we're trying to do is a few braitot that are going to come up, and each one says something a little different, and we have to try to reconcile them all together. And the second braita says that a cattle barn is exempt from a mezuzah, and here it doesn't say anything about the woman using them. So this sounds like a regular cattle barn is patur, and this goes against the Rav Kahana's interpretation that a plain cattle barn is chayav. Joel, question?
Yeah, why would it be that like a barn would have a requirement? Nobody lives there.
That's true. Nevertheless, what we'll see is we're gonna cite the pasuk that's based on. But the point is, it's made for your personal use. It's yours. It's your barn. It's your storage unit. You put your things there, and that's part of living, right? You don't live in every room in your house. You don't sleep. Sorry, you don't sleep in every room in your house. But you your house is something that protects your belongings. And so these are your belongings, even though you're not actually sleeping or eating there, right? So that would be that Rav Kahana. Although there is machloket about this, right? Other people will say, no, it's just a storage unit that's not called living. So that's the challenge. So ela meine otot mitkashetot. So according to Rav Yehuda, when he says that because the women beautify themselves, how does he interpret it? He can't interpret it that it means bathing, because he doesn't think that bathing, it's only because it's bathing. He thinks even if there's nobody bathing there, they would still be patur, these barns. So what does it mean? It means they're beautifying themselves. Now, if you're beautifying yourself, using it for makeup, that's actually a use, right? That would be more of a reason to put a mezuzah. It's just a small use. It's not quite sleeping and eating. You just go there to put on makeup. People put on makeup in the bathroom. It's not a big use. So, and here's what it comes to me to say: these storage houses and barns, even though women go there to put on makeup, nevertheless piturin, they're not. So a storage unit doesn't require it. Place where put on makeup is not enough of a use, and they're piturin altogether. So that's Rav Yehuda's opinion. So Rav Yehuda is a lot more, let's say, mekel, not requiring mezuzot. Rav Kahana is more machmir, requiring mezuzot in the barn. Amad le Rav Kahana, v'shanashim mitkashetot bahen piturin. Now Rav Kahana counters with yet another braita. V'hatanya v'hadrefet bakar pitura min hamezuzah v'shanashim mitkashetot ba chayevet b'mezuzah. This braita actually sounds like it's a continuation of the previous one. It's not clear is it's another braita or just now we're bringing the rest of it. But anyway, the rest of it says a cattle barn does not have a mezuzah, but if women put on makeup there, then they do require a mezuzah. So there you go, Rav Yehuda. Now you have a contradiction between two. If you're going to explain the first one that's talking about putting on makeup, now you have a contradiction between two. So Ella may eat. So now Rav Kahana is continuing and now going to defend his first answer. Ella may mitkashetot tana'ehi. So Rav Kahana tells Rav Yehuda, you're going to have to agree that there's two different baraitot there that reflect two different opinions of Tanaim. There's a machloket among the Tanaim whether a barn that you put makeup on requires mezuzah or not. So now you're already agreeing that you cannot reconcile all the baraitot. I'm also going to say that we cannot reconcile all the baraitot, but I'm going to assume that they're talking about different circumstances. I think that the different baraitot are arguing about a regular barn, that no one's using it for bathing or for makeup, and whether that is required or not. And here's my proof. The Tanya, betecha hamiyuchad lecha, perat lebet hateven ulbet habakar ulbet ha'asim ulbet ha'osarot shebeturim min hamezuzah v'yesh mehayavin. This is a long baraita. I'll call this the long baraita because we're gonna discuss it for a few more lines. So because the pasuk says uchtavtam amazot betecha, your mezuzah has to be on your home. That means a house that is special for you, that's used by you, designated for you as a residence, and that means not one where you store hay, and not a cattle barn, and not a woodshed, and not a storage unit. All these do not require mezuzah. That's the first opinion, Tanakama, v'yesh mechayavin, but some say it is required. So you see, there definitely is a machloket, because here you have in one baraita, you have two different opinions. This same baraita continues. with the words be'emet amidu. These are interesting words. You say the truth is, right? Well, what happened? What you said before, right? Is that not the truth? So when you say, whenever you introduce something with be'emet amidu, what follows is generally more authoritative. Right? This is a strong tradition, and this is what you should follow. So be'emet amidu, bet hakiseh, bet habursiki, bet hamelchatz, a house of the chair, right? Literally, it means a toilet. Or a tannery, or very smelly. We have a picture here of a old style tannery, and to prepare the hides, they used urine and dung, and so tanneries were very smelly, and therefore it does not require mezuzah. And also bet hamerchatz, a place where you bathe, bet tevilah, a place where you dip, dunk for immersion, vanashim neotot bahen, and a place where women make themselves beautify themselves, piturim min hamezuzah. So that's the full baraita. So you see that this baraita does say that there's a machloket, and so that's what Rav Kahana says. So let's see how each opinion interprets this complex long baraita. Rav Kahana meteres l'tameh, Rav Yehuda meteres l'tameh. Each one can explain it according to their own opinions. Rav Kahana meteres l'tameh, betecha miyuchad lecha pirat lebet. So now we're just repeating that long baraita, but we're going to stick in the explanations of how they interpret each section. When it mentions all these storage units, it's talking about plain old storage units, not used for anything else, and that is the machloket. So that's Rav Kahana. That's what I was saying. I think there's a machloket about it. Rav Kahana personally sounds like he thinks it does require mezuzah, but he can explain away the other baraitot that disagree that that's a different Tana. But the Tanakh Kama says they are required. And then the continuation of the Braita says, "Bemet amru bet hakiseh, bet haburski, bet hamelchas, bet hatebila, ve'an nashim rochasot behen, umayne otehen, ve'nashim neoten behen, mayne otehen rochasot, beturim min hamezuzah." The second part of the Braita is talking about all the bathroom things and the place where the women beautify themselves. What does that mean? It means bathing, right? Look at the whole list. It's all things about bathing. So this also is about bathing, and therefore peturim min hamezuzah. So these, everyone agrees, is not required. Okay, so what's not mentioned here is the makeup one. So the makeup one, he can say, Rav Kahana would say, yes, it is required. I mean, it requires a regular storehouse, all the more so if it's actually used for putting on makeup. Okay, now a question on Rav Kahana's interpretation. If the place where the women beautify themselves, that means that they wash there. You already mentioned a washing house, right? You already mentioned a place where they bathe. So why would you have to repeat it again? No, you have to repeat it again because there's two different kinds of bath houses. One is a public one, one's a private one. I might have thought, if you only said one of them, a public bathhouse is very smelly. Everybody's going in there. It's disgusting. But a private bathhouse, right, only used by a couple of people, it's not so smelly. You might have thought that it does require mezuzah, and therefore this comes to teach. Yet no, not even that. That's why it has to bring a repetition. This is interesting, relevant for us because with modern plumbing, usually our bathrooms are not very smelly. So is it just about the smell itself, or just because the use is not for a dignified use? You don't invite guests to chat in the bathroom. So that would be the second, even if it's not particularly smelly, still is exempt from a mezuzah. Okay, that's all the understanding of Rav Kahana. And now Rav Yehuda, how is he going to explain this long baraita? Rav Yehuda meteres l'tameh, hachi katani betecha hamiyuchad lecha. פרט לבית התבן ובית הבקר ובית העשרים ובית האוסרות שבתורים מן המזוזה אפילו מתקשטות. So now we're just quoting the Braita that says, you learn it from the word your house, or house that's a residence for you, and that does not include place where you put the hay and cattle barn and woodshed and storage unit. These do not require mezuzah. And now Rav Yehuda is adding his interpretation, even if you use it to put on makeup, it doesn't help any, right? That's what he said earlier. But some say if you're putting on makeup there, then it is required. So the whole machloket here is only if you use one of these storage units to put on makeup. But if you don't use it for makeup, then everyone agrees, no, you don't need it. So you see that by interpreting this baraita only to talk about the case of makeup, he can say everyone would agree that a storage unit does not require a mezuzah. And now the second half of the braita, באמת אמרו, בית הכיסא, בית הבורסקי, בית המרחץ, בית הטבילה, אף על פי שאנשים מתקשות בהם פטורים מן המזוזה, משום דנפש זו המה. And then the second part is about these bathhouses and the tannery. These, even if the women do put on makeup there, they do not require mezuzah. Even though someone's actually using it for something, but they're too smelly, and therefore it's not respectful to put a mezuzah on in this place. Okay, so now they both explained it, okay, let me just show you a summary chart. Right, so the question was, does a storage place require a mezuzah? According to Rav Kahana, basically yes, a barn, that standard use barn, does require it. He notes that there is another opinion that says no, it doesn't require it, but he prefers this. And if you're putting on makeup there, then for sure yes, and everybody would agree with that. And according to Rav Yehuda, everyone agrees that a barn does not require, a barn storage unit, all the same, does not require a mezuzah. And but if you put on makeup, he still presses probably no, but notes that there is another opinion that would say yes. So that's the basic breakdown. Halakha l'maaseh follows Rav Kahana. A storage unit therefore does require mezuzah, and that would mean if you have a garage does require mezuzah. What about a storage unit that you have in one of those buildings where you rent a locker or rent a big storage unit? That also would require a mezuzah, right? It's even though you're not sleeping there, it's your stuff. It's designated to you. You rent it out for long term. So, I mean, as long as a mezuzah will stay there and people won't desecrate it, that actually would require a mezuzah. All right, now, Rav Yehuda stama dibra hakol patur. Hold on, you just told me that according to Rav Yehuda, for standard usage of a storage unit, everyone agrees is patur. Hatanya bish'arecha echad share batim vechad share chaserot vechad share medinot vechad share ayarot verefet vedulin umatben veosrot yain veosrot shemen chayavin bimzuzah. So now we have yet another braita that says, what does it mean bisharecha, in your gates? Gates of a home, gates of a courtyard, gates of a city, gates of a province, and right. So a barn, lul is a chicken coop, matben is where you put teven, where you hay storage, wine storage, oil storage. All these will require a mezuzah. Yachol she'ani marbe af bet shad achsadra umirpeset tamud lomar bayit. Ma bayit miyuchad ledira yatzu elu she'en miyuchadin ledira. Now, you might think that, okay, these require mezuzah. What about a gatehouse to guard an entrance, or a portico, a balcony? All these things, does that require? That's why it says bayit. It has to be something that is used for residence, and these are not used for residence at all. You don't even store things in these areas. Okay, all this is an intro. This is all a challenge to the Rav Yehuda, right? Remember that Rav Yehuda here is the one that said everyone agrees that a storage unit does not require a mezuzah, and we're bringing this long baraita, and already you can see how it's going to reject Rav Yehuda, because here it just mentioned the whole list of items that are storage units. It says requires a mezuzah. So this is going to be a final challenge to Rav Yehuda, and it's not going to work. Now that we brought the baraita, we're going to quote the whole thing. It's a long baraita up till here. So we're going to see lots of different cases, but we have pictures of the cases. So here's a bet sha'ar, right? A gate, a gate of a fence that's around a city. This is nachsadra, which would be like an entranceway into a home, but it doesn't have a roof. This would be a marpes. It looks like a motel, right? So this is if there's a little gate here, and so an open area. So all these are not used for living space, right? You don't put things there, you don't live there. And here's a gateway that has no lintel, right? You open it, that's it, has two side posts, but no lintel. So these do not require a mezuzah. Okay, next part of the Braita says, Yachol shani marbe af bet hakiseh, ubet habursiki, ubet hamerchas, ubet hatevila. Now that you told me that bayit means something that is used as residence, so would that mean I'm going to include also the toilet room and the tannery and the bathhouse and the mikveh? Talmud lomar bayit ma bayit ha'asur lechavod, af kol ha'asur lechavod yasu elu she'en asuyin lechavod. Very good. So this is the basic principle. Only things that are designed to honor those who are entering, and these places are not honorable places. Here's another picture of a portico. Okay, now how about even the Temple Mount chambers and courtyards that are there? Talmud lomar bayit ma bayit shehu chol, af kol shehu chol yatsu elu shehen kodesh tiyuvta. So we are going to exclude the Bet HaMikdash and all of its areas because they are holy. And when it says betecha means your house. Your house means your secular house, non-sacred, so not anything sacred. Okay, these things were not directly relevant to us, but the bottom line is to Yufta. This is a challenge to Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda says everyone agrees that a plain old storage unit does not require mezuzah, and here this is clear, it does require mezuzah, and there's nobody that disagrees here. So there for sure is at least one opinion that does require mezuzah in a storage unit, and so therefore Rav Yehuda is rejected, and that's why the halacha is like Rav Kahana. Okay, and now we get to the last topic, which is personal residence versus synagogue. Taneh Rav Shemuel Bar Yehuda Kameh de Rava. Rav Shemuel had this braita. He taught it in front of Rava. Shisha she'arim peturim min hamezuzah. There are 6 kinds of gates that do not require mezuzah. Let's count them as we go along. Bet HaTeven, where you store the hay. Bet HaBakar, cattle barn. Bet HaIsim, woodshed. Bet HaOsarot, storage house for everything else. Shar HaMadai, a median gate. This is some kind of gate that has a dome or of some kind. That's 5. Shar Sheno Mekore, a gate that has no top. Like I showed you in the picture, and a gate that is very low, less than 10 tefachim high, right? A very short gate, you kind of have to crawl. How many things are that? 7. You just told me the following 6 don't require mezuzah, and then you listed 7 items. Amaleh. Patach b'shisha v'salak b'shiv'ah. You started with 6, you ended with 7. What happened to the count? Amaleh shad hamadai tamadi tanaehi. Oh, the one that I mentioned, the median gate that has some kind of dome, that is actually subject to machlokes. What I meant to say is that there's 6 for sure that everyone agrees. There is a 7th that's subject to disagreement. What's the disagreement? The Tanya kippah. Gateway of with a dome. Rabbi Meir mechayeb b'mezuzah, chachamim poterin. So Rabbi Meir is more strict. Chachamim say no. V'shavin she'im yesh beragla asara shechayevet b'mezuzah. But they both agree that if the bottom half has 10 tefachim, is 10 tefachim high, then for sure it requires a mezuzah, as in this picture, right? If it has 10. A straight 10, and then just the top goes higher and is a dome, everyone would agree that would require a mezuzah. This happens a lot. A lot of homes, a lot of places have arched doorways, so yes, they do require a mezuzah. The question is like where you put it. How do you decide when it starts? Sometimes they start curving in down here. All right, that's what makes them difficult. But yes, they do require it if it's high. So therefore, that's what we said. 6, everyone agrees. The 7th one is subject to disagreement. Now, regarding this disagreement between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim, we're going to define it further. Amar Abaye dekule alma gavoha asara ve'en beragla shelosha ve'lav kelum hi. Iname yesh beragla shelosha ve'ena gavoha asara ve'lav kelum hi. It's better explained with a picture. Everyone agrees that if it's tall, right? Let's say at the bottom, you need an open space horizontally of at least 4 tefachim, right? Four of these, like a foot. Or 16 inches. So everybody agrees. That if it is 4 tefachim wide, and it ends up being at the first three. Sorry, if it's less than that. Okay, if it starts sloping. Even within the first three, and within the first three of height, there is not a consistently 4 tefachim wide, like in this picture. So it gets smaller already in the bottom. Then everybody agrees it does not require a mezuzah. This is just like a small hole. This is not considered a doorway. So that's for sure if it's too narrow. Also, if it's too short, even if it's very wide, and it's wide even at the bottom of 3 tefachim, but if it doesn't reach a height of 10, then everyone also agrees that it would not require a mezuzah. The question is in between. If it does have 4 amot of width from within the first 3 tefachim of height, but it also does reach 10 tefachim in the middle, but within over here it's filled in, so you don't have a full 4 by 10. That is the question. That's actually the subject of the machloket between the two opinions. ארבעה, ויש בה לחוק להשלימה לארבעה. רבי מאיר סבר חוקקין להשלים, רבנן סברה אין חוקקין להשלים. In this case, Rabbi Meir is one that says, we saw this number of times in Eruvin, חוקקין להשלים means we imagine it, we chisel it out in our imagination. We imagine as if these bricks weren't there, and then it would be a 10 high by 4 wide. That's the minimum amount for an opening. Rabbi Meir says we can use our imagination since it is at least open up to here, and so therefore it requires a mezuzah. Whereas Chachamim say, no, if it's not open the whole time, it has to be at least a rectangle opening 4 by 10, and this does not have it. You don't use your imagination to carve things out, and therefore he says you do not use that principle. It does not require a mezuzah. Okay, now regarding a synagogue, Tenor Banan, Bet HaKnesset Bet HaShah Bet HaShutafin Hayevet Bimzuzah. So this baraita teaches us that a synagogue, a woman's house, meaning a woman who lives alone, right? Does she require a mezuzah? And what if a home is jointly owned by 2 people? All these require a mezuzah. That's the baraita. Question on the baraita, peshita, of course, right? Of course they would require mezuzah. Why would we think not? Ma'odetema betecha velo betaha. Betecha velo batehem kamashma lan. The peshita is really going on the second two, right? Why would you think that a woman or joint ownership does not? Because the word betecha, you have to make a mezuzah on your betecha is singular masculine. Since it's singular masculine, it doesn't say beta or batechem. So therefore, I might have thought that it's only a home owned by one man. That requires mezuzah, not any other case. Okay, that's why the Baraita came to teach me that. Now, wait a second. You just made a good derivation from Pasuk. Why don't you say that that's in fact true, and we should interpret it in fact in that way? Well, because at the end of the second paragraph of Shema, it says you should do this. You should put on mezuzah so that your life will be long. What, do these want life? Meaning a man wants a life, and the others don't? Women and partners don't want long life? Obviously, everybody wants long life, and that's why we don't interpret betecha to mean only that. Okay, this gets into the whole thing. What's the purpose of a mezuzah? Is it for protection and long life? Rambam has a long thing about this and says, no, it's only for spiritual benefit, to remind you of Yichud Hashem, not for physical, material benefit or physical benefit. Okay, in any case, that's why we don't say that. Ela betecha lamali. Okay, so if that's the case, why was the Torah so vague? Why did it say betecha instead of batechem? And then I would have known that if it's owned by partners or women, that there would be chayav. Answer is kidrabad amar Rava derech biatcha v'chi akar einish kar'eh dimina akar beresha. Because betecha you can also read as if there's an aleph in there and read it with as biatcha, the way you come in. How do you usually come into a house? With your right foot forwards, and that teaches you that you should put the mezuzah on your right side as you're walking in. Okay, that's where we learn that halacha from. Okay, and now since we just talked about that derivation, we're going to quote a similar derivation and discussion, but this one regards last week's parasha of leprosy of a house. What kind of homes does the law of leprosy apply to? In other words, in some places, even if you see some mold, it doesn't matter. It's not the law does not apply to them. Tanya idach bet haKnesset bet hashutafin bet haisha metamein bin ga'im. We have another braita that says both a synagogue and a house that's owned by partners and house that's owned by a woman, they can become tameh with leprosy. Peshita, isn't that obvious? Ma'odetema uba asher lo habayit. Lo velo la, lo velo lahen, kamashmalan. So it says he comes to the Kohen will come and check out the person to who owns the house. Lo, asher lo habayit. Lo is singular masculine. So I might have thought only when it's owned by one man and not by partners or by women. And therefore this braita comes to teach that the law does apply in those cases as well. Wait, why don't you say it's a good point? It does say law, right? So maybe it does in fact only apply in those cases. No, in the same chapter, actually the pasuk right before says, if this occurs in the home and the house of the land under your possession, achuzatchem is plural, so that includes partners and that includes women. Ela lo lamali. So why does it say law in that pasuk? מי שמייחד ביתו לו, שאינו רוצה להשאיל כליו, ואומר שאין לו, הקדוש ברוך הוא מפרסמו, כשמפנה את ביתו, פירת המשאיל כליו לאחרים. We learn a fantastic lesson from this. What does it mean? Why does it say law? Because when a person treats his house like only his and is stingy and doesn't share things, then he gets midah keneged midah that he's going to have to bring everything out of the house. So someone comes over and says, "Can I borrow your blender?" Right? And he says, "No, I don't have one." And he always says, "I don't have one." So then God will publicize that he does have one. How so? Well, when the Kohen comes and says, "Oh, this house is full of leprosy," first take everything out, and then I'll declare it that there's sara'at, right? Take everything out so that it doesn't get all tameh. So he's going to take his blender out on his lawn. Everybody say, "Oh, remember last week I asked you if blender, you said you didn't have one." Oh, look, there it is right there. So this is a midah keneged midah, and the good lesson that you should always share. Very nice. Okay, now Bet Knesset mi mitameh ben ga'im. Almost done here. Bet Knesset, is that true? Does Bet Knesset, does that apply? The law of sarat apply? והתניא יכול יהיו בתי כנסיות ובתי מדרשות מטמאים בן געים, תלמוד לומר ובא אשר לא הבית, מי שמיוחד לו, יעשו אלו שאין מיוחדין לו. Right, we have another braita that says, can it be that Bet Knesset, Bet Midrash, it does apply? That's why it says, whoever to him, the house belongs to him, only someone who it's his residence, but not a synagogue and not a Bet Midrash. It's not your residence, right? These are public areas. So therefore, it looks like a Bet Knesset does not require, and this goes against the braita we just had above. We're now going to present three answers to the contradiction. La kashya hadabi meir hadabanan. Tetanya bet hakneset sheyesh ba bet dira lechazan hakneset chayav bimzuzah ve'shen ba bet dira Rabbi Meir mechayev chachamim poterim. Everyone agrees that if a bet knesset has an apartment for the chazan in those days, by the way, wasn't the singer, but he was more like we call the gabai. He takes care of the knesset. If he sleeps there, then everyone would agree that you need a mezuzah on the bet knesset. But if it does not have a residence, then Rabbi Meir says chayav. In other words, it's still considered like a residence. And since it's chayav for mezuzah, he's the one that would say that a bet knesset, you do apply the law of leprosy, so that he would be the author of the first baraita. Hachamim potirim, they say a bet knesset that has no residence is not a residence, and therefore it does not require mezuzah. And also, he would be the author of this baraita that you do not apply the law of leprosy. That's answer number one. Answer number two, both of them could be Rabbanan who say that you don't require mezuzah. You can say that these B'raitot are talking about two different kinds of Bet Knesset. The first one that says that you do not apply the law, that you do apply the law of leprosy, was talking about where there is an apartment together with the Bet Knesset, and this B'raita that says you don't is talking about a case where you do not require where it does not have a residence. Okay, or maybe both are talking about where there's no apartment. It's talking about, depends where the Bet Knesset is. If it's in a large city, a synagogue in a large city, everyone's coming and going, tourists and visitors. So that's a public area. You would not require mezuzah, and you would not apply the law of leprosy. But a synagogue that's in a small village, there, right? It's more of a like private use. If it's only a few people, everybody knows each other. There aren't visitors, so it's like a partnership. It's a small partnership, and therefore it does require mezuzah, and that one would be subject to the laws of leprosy. And the bottom line, Bet Knesset does not technically require a mezuzah. Nevertheless, the widespread custom is that we do put a mezuzah in all the rooms of the Bet Knesset because it looks nice, but you wouldn't say baracha when you do so. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen.